9 experienced hikers, a mountain they had climbed before, a route they had planned for months. They were found scattered across the snow, half naked, barefoot, in temperatures of -40. Their tent had been cut open from the inside. One had human flesh in his mouth. One was missing her tongue. 2 had fractured skulls. 2 had chest injuries so severe, the medical examiner compared them to a car crash. There were no other footprints in the snow. The Soviet government closed the investigation and classified the files. Their official conclusion: death by a compelling natural force. Nobody has ever fully explained what happened on Dead Mountain. You're listening to MirkCast, where darkness speaks.
On January 23, 1959, 10 hikers set out for a winter trek through Russia's Ural Mountains. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, one of the most respected young hikers in the Soviet Union. His group were not amateurs. They were unbelievably tough. On a previous expedition, a hunter accidentally blasted one of them with a shotgun. Instead of waiting for a helicopter, she hopped right up and cheerfully skied 50 miles to the nearest clinic. These were exactly the kind of people who were not supposed to die in the mountains. One member turned back after several days for medical reasons. The other 9 continued along their route. That one decision, turning back, saved his life. He lived to be 75 years old and spent every year until his death trying to understand what killed his friends. They had planned to send a message back to their sports club about 3 weeks after setting off. When the club didn't hear from them by February 20th, a search party set out to find them. What they found would haunt every person involved for the rest of their lives. The search party reached the group's last known campsite on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl. In the Mansi language, that name means Dead Mountain. The tent was still standing. It had been cut open from the inside. All of their gear was still inside: skis, boots, coats, food. Whatever made 9 experienced winter hikers abandon their tent without their boots or coats in -40-degree temperatures, it was immediate, it was terrifying, and it left no trace. The search party found the first 5 bodies spread out over the snow. They were frozen, barefoot, in their underwear, some with burned hands, as if they had been trying to build a fire with bare skin. One had bitten off a piece of his own knuckle, investigators believed, to stifle a cry or stay awake. 3 of the 5 appeared to have been crawling back toward the tent when they died. Whatever they were running from, they had tried to go back. Months later, after the snow melted, investigators discovered the bodies of the remaining 4 hikers. These 4 were different. What had been done to them, or what had happened to them, was something else entirely.
2 of the 4 had fractured skulls. 2 more had major chest fractures. And 1 hiker, Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue. The medical examiner who performed the autopsies said the chest injuries were unlike anything he had seen outside of a vehicle collision. The force required to cause them was enormous. Yet, there was no external bruising, no wounds on the skin, as if something had crushed them from the inside. And then came the detail that the Soviet government tried to suppress for decades. Some of the hikers' clothing was found to contain significant levels of radiation. Witnesses from another hiking group, camped 50 kilometers to the south, reported seeing strange orange spheres in the sky to the north on the night of the incident. The chief investigator of the case, Lev Ivanov, said in a 1990 interview, "I suspected at the time, and am almost sure now, that these bright flying spheres had a direct connection to the group's death." He said that in 1990, 31 years after the incident, long after the Soviet Union could punish him for saying it. Over 60 years, investigators, scientists, journalists, and researchers have proposed dozens of explanations. The most recent official theory, proposed when Russia reopened the investigation in 2019, was a slab avalanche. A slab of snow could have slid out over the tent, causing the hikers to fear a larger avalanche was imminent, and forcing them to cut their way out and run. The problem: the slope wasn't steep enough for a traditional avalanche. There were no avalanche signs at the site. And it doesn't explain the radiation, or the missing tongue, or the internal injuries with no external wounds. Others have proposed secret Soviet weapons testing. The orange spheres seen in the sky, documented by multiple independent witnesses, could have been experimental military ordnance. A concussive blast could explain the internal injuries. The radiation could explain the clothing contamination. And a government cover-up would explain why the files were classified for decades. Others have pointed to the indigenous Mansi people, who considered Kholat Syakhl sacred ground. But there were no Mansi footprints in the snow. No evidence of any other human presence. And nobody, in over 60 years of investigation, has been able to explain where Lyudmila Dubinina's tongue went. In 2019, 60 years after the incident, Russia officially reopened the investigation. They concluded it was an avalanche. They closed it again. Most researchers did not accept that conclusion. The pass in the Ural Mountains has been renamed Dyatlov Pass in memory of the group's leader. A museum was built in Yekaterinburg to preserve their story. The one hiker who turned back, Yuri Yudin, spent the rest of his life trying to find answers. He died in 2013 without finding them. Here is what we know for certain, 9 experienced people who had skied through shotgun wounds without complaint, were so terrified by something on that mountain that they cut their way out of their tent and ran barefoot into minus 40-degree darkness rather than face whatever was outside. And whatever it was, left no footprints, left no witnesses, left no explanation. Just 9 bodies on a mountain the locals had always called Dead Mountain. Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin, Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonishenko, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolevatov, Nikolai Thibault Brignol, Semyon Zolotaryov. 9 people who went into a mountain and never came back. The mountain is still there, The pass still bears their leader's name, and people still hike it every year, trying to understand what it took from them. Nobody has. This has been MirkCast, where darkness speaks. New stories drop every week. Don't watch alone.